Back when I had my long hair, I always felt like I somewhat looked similar to Sophie Hatter when she had her long braid. Then I cut my hair short and suddenly I was like, wait, I look like Sophie when she cut her hair short. And then the other day I went to the hairdresser and asked for hair that was slightly too dark for my complexion, so I looked a little bit like Snow White. And when I came home, I looked into the mirror and I was like, now I look like Kiki. My hair is obviously a little bit longer than hers, but for some reason that idea really struck in my head and I was like, I could make a Kiki's Delivery Service dress. Obviously Kiki's dress is very formless and Kiki's Delivery Service is set in an idealized 1950s European town. So I'm almost sad that they didn't use the 1950s silhouette to make her dress, because that would have been absolutely adorable. What we're going to do is we're going to make Kiki's Delivery Service dress, but we're going to make it historically accurate. I have ordered an original antique 1950s pattern to make this dress from. So this is what the pattern looks like. As you can see, this has a button front, a pointy collar, short sleeves, and then a very wide skirt. So not too dissimilar to the things I normally wear, but I'm quite excited to see how the bodice will fit, because I normally fit my things just kind of to my corset and to me, but this has multiple darts, one coming from here and the other one being here, so I'm just going to follow the pattern as it is and see what the fit is going to look like. The only thing that I was surprised about is this is quite a full skirt. So I thought this would be a circle skirt, but it's actually an A-line skirt, so I think it must be the petticoat that gives us the swoosh. But we're going to jump back to me cutting out the pattern, which has already happened, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the pattern pieces look like then. So we've got our fabric, which is pre-washed linen. So I buy it pre-washed, but then I've actually pre-washed it another 2 times, just because when it first arrived it was like really stark black. Just took me back straight to my emo days, which is something I am not ashamed of, but just not really the vibe I'm going for here. With that, we're going to start cutting out our pattern. So we've got the front of the skirt, the back of the skirt, the front of the bodice and the back of the bodice, and then we've got these middle bits here that are kind of meant to be the button fronts that go into the skirt, but I'm not gonna do that. And I know I'm always like that. I'll be like, I follow a pattern but I do it differently, but just I really don't like it when the button front goes kind of like into the skirt here. It always looks a little bit clumsy, and because we've got the side zipper, I think I'm just gonna have the button front kind of up to the waist and then not going below. So these bits here will not be necessary. And then we've got 2 different sleeves. We've got the long sleeve and the short sleeve, just shown on here. So you've got the short sleeve and the long sleeve, and this is the type I want to go for. So all of these are on the thinnest paper and they don't have any instructions on them. It's just a matter of having little dots on them, as you can sometimes see with antique patterns. So for example, this one here has the number 8 ingrained here, and then it also says sleeve. So I will just pick out the pieces I need and transfer them to my fabric and close the door on the cat, because I don't want her scratching these. So we've got everything cut out here. I'm going to start by assembling the skirt. So we've got just one big front panel and one big back panel, and they need to be put together with the pockets to the side. And I'm going to leave this side seam here open because that's where I want to put the zipper. Unfortunately, the zipper has not arrived yet. So I'm hopeful that maybe Royal Mail will deliver it in the afternoon, because it's one of the last things I need to do. So as long as it arrives later today, that's fine. And I did order it over a week ago, so I'm not sure why it's taking so long, but let's get started. I've assembled the skirt and I have makeshift pleated it for now. I'm not sure I'm going to stick with this because I also have to see how big the bodice is for it to kind of like line up. But just for now to see what it looks like. So now we're going to go over and assemble the bodice. So this is what the back piece looks like. And I have some markings down here because there's going to be a dart right here and another one right there. So the darts are what I'm going to do first. On the other hand, for the front, there's going to be a button front, so the front is open. And if I put this on me to show you guys, there's going to be a dart coming from this side towards the apex of the bust and another one coming from the waist, and I'm going to do both on each side. So first darts, and then we're going to assemble the bodice together and see what it actually fits like. I'm back from the puppy walk, and the next thing I'm going to do is try this on because I'm not really sure about it currently. I decided to dress pretty for this video, but it means that I'm wearing a dress, so I'll have to take everything off to try this on. So that wasn't my most smart thought. I think I'll try it on just now because then I can decide how much of the front can be folded into the button front and just the general fit of it, whether this works at all on me. So this pattern is actually really interesting because I'd say, generally speaking, if it was a different pattern, I'd say it's too loose. It's got a lot of room, but the way it's cut, it creates already a really good silhouette. So I'm amazed. It might just be because the shoulders are a little bit wider than I would normally have my shoulders. So this side is still open, so it's not looking as nice on this side. But like generally speaking, I've got such a V shape to my bodice. I actually really like it. Like it looked a little bit lost on my mannequin, but I think on me, that's actually really cute. Let me show you a little bit closer. I think I'm holding this side where the side zipper is gonna go. So yeah, I think it's cute. The skirt itself will need a little bit more adjustments because currently it sits on the mannequin okay, but yeah, so the way I've pleated is a little bit too big, but I always knew that this wouldn't be the final one. I just wanted to have it hanging just in case any of the fabric needed to hang out a little bit. The sleeve is a very small sleeve, so it doesn't have like tons of puff up here, but I think because of the way it's cut slightly over the shoulder, it doesn't need the poof to kind of add the right silhouette because, you know, I'm always a little bit self-conscious about this part of my arm. I think because of the way this is cut, it is naturally wider than my arm, so it will give me the right silhouette. So the cuff is actually the same size as the sleeve. So I'm just gonna sew this together, wrap it around, and then ease the sleeve into this. So not properly gathering, but just like easing it a little bit. I might try it on again. Maybe I'll just leave my dress off for this step and then try it on again and then sew it all together. So little try on after I set the sleeves in. And first of all, the sleeves turned out completely without any gathering at all, which wasn't easy because I've never set sleeves that don't have gathering. So it was a lot of like putting in, trying, putting out and trying to get it right. But so this is what the sleeve actually looks like. And here I've just kind of like rolled it up because I feel like it's kind of like an awkward length. I honestly thought it would be a little bit shorter, more like this. Just based on the picture, looks much shorter than this. that's fine because we can just roll it up. Even though that means we'll see the seam down here, which isn't perfect. So if I had known I'd roll it up, I would have probably finished the cuff a little bit differently. So yeah, I think that is for me a better length. And other than that, now the next step will be to put in the collar. So I've already put this on interfacing. So this is, it's just too black. This is one part of the collar, interfacing on the other side. Sew it together. It's going to be quite a big collar. It goes on here. And then I'm going to sew everything together. So it's going to be skirt pleating to match this top. But I think I might, because it does actually feel a little bit too big, so I might make the button front take up a little bit more space just to get it to pull up a little bit more. And that's when I'll then hopefully be getting the side zipper. And then, yeah, we'll continue. Bodice is basically finished now, and I have made a mistake, or rather I have purposefully set the collar wrong, because by extending the button front to take up more space of the fabric just so it would fit better, I then ended up not having enough of the lapel up here to create a little like sticky out lapel. So I could have just made the collar slightly smaller to create that effect again. But then that would have required me to do some kind of like facing or bias binding, just so when it pops open you don't have an unfinished seam up here. So now the button front leads directly into the collar, and the collar then has the very dramatic pointy tip here, but there's no unfinished seams anywhere that I needed to finish. So it doesn't look exactly the same way that the picture suggested, but it saved me some more work. And I don't mind it. I think it looks quite cute. So I will now fit the skirt to the bodice. I will probably sew over the button front here just so it doesn't like move as I'm attaching the skirt. Then I will pleat the skirt into the size of the bodice. So normally I would have gathered it because I prefer gathering just because I'm not good at pleating, but this tells me to pleat. So we are actually going to follow the instructions and try again to pleat it a little bit more so it will actually fit properly. Okay. Let's go. I have spent so very much time trying to pleat the skirt that the zipper has been delivered in the meantime. So I did eventually just give up and just gathered it instead. So it's not what I was aiming for, but I just had to admit defeat. I could not get it to be pleated in a way where it fit properly, and then also all of the pleats started being uneven, and I guess I could have just measured the circumference of the skirt and the circumference of the bodice and then calculated how big each of the pleats has to be. But hear me out. I am a scientist by day, and I am definitely not doing any math on the weekend, so that's just not going to happen. So I've just gathered it in, and that's fine. It's actually funny because I just walked past this, and even though it's on my dress form that I use for every single project I make, and it's got an Edwardian corset underneath, it just looks already so much more 1950s. I don't understand why this pattern is so much more 1950s than another blouse pattern that I would have like fitted in the same way, but I mean, I guess that's what we're here for, making something 1950s, so goal accomplished. Like, especially if you look at it from the side, like the silhouette of how the bust line falls. Well done, team, I guess. Which means we are now left with the most challenging task of this project, putting in the zipper. But the good thing is, the fabric is black, the zipper is black. So even if I do not manage to sew this in well, it's going to be pretty well camouflaged. We are going to just close up the skirt, which is currently still open here, sew in the zipper, close this up, hem the bottom, which I have some bias binding for, because I was expecting this to be a circle skirt, so I thought the bias binding would be useful so that it doesn't kind of like wrinkle. But this is actually an A-line, so it would have been fine to just do a folded hem. In that order, I will continue, and then I will chat with you afterwards again. So the dress is finished. I have also finished the waistband, which I think I might have made a little bit too long, but well. So now the last things I need to do is I have to make buttonholes and add buttons. And then I have these little strips that I just kind of improvised, cut out from red fabric because they're meant to be a little hairband that... Tilly, could you not scratch the ball? Thank you. I just used a little bit of scrap fabric to tie around my head to see how long it has to be and just cut it out accordingly. So that needs to be sewn and ironed, and the buttons have to be attached. But other than that, we are finished. So that was not too difficult. But at this point, I understand why Gigi is a black cat, because there's so much cat and dog hair on this black fabric. And also, I know that there's a little bit of like a discussion on whether Kiki's dress is black or actually blue. To me, I think it is black, and it was just painted in a slightly blue hue, just because if it had been painted as black, there wouldn't have been any dimension in it. So this is my theory, but I'd love to hear whether you guys think it's black or blue as well. I've just gone with black because, as you know, I'm not a huge fan of blue, so it was just a natural choice. But maybe you think it's blue after all. Either way, I'm gonna finish this off screen, and that means we're ready to jump over into the reveal. So I think I am definitely going to use this pattern again. I'm really happy with how it turned out. There are a few things I would do differently if I was to make it again. I think generally speaking, I don't know if you can actually see this against the dark background, but I think it would sit better if it was just a tiny little bit further into my shoulder. And also all the side seams are a little bit far out. So I tried fixing that by making the button front a little bit further in, so that I took in some more fabric there, which then led to the collar not fitting properly. So I think if I just changed the pattern to be a little bit smaller towards the shoulder and also took in the entire side here, that would be better. But I'd have to do it in a way that doesn't change the armhole, because obviously that fits perfectly with the sleeve, so I wouldn't want to change that so it doesn't line up anymore. As for the skirt, it's fine. It's not special or anything. It's just an A-line skirt. So I think if I wanted to make this pattern again with something else, I'd probably just use my normal circle skirt pattern. But generally speaking, I'm actually so happy with how this turned out, and it looks different to what I normally make, even though you might now say it looks exactly the same. But at least to me, it's just a slightly different shape, and I quite like it. The only thing I do not like is my 1950s petticoat. So this is just very polyestery, and I always have the problem. So like, I feel like it's just a little bit too short, and then what happens is your skirt kind of goes out like this and then just drops like that. I really don't like what that looks like, so I actually wore this petticoat on my hips to make it the right length for the skirt. So I think one day I might eventually make a new petticoat, because the one I normally wear is just like a 1940s style one that is very small and not too exaggerated. So I think I want to come back one day and make a petticoat that fits perfectly with circle skirts and gives them a little bit more swoosh, without being like an overly over-the-top 1950s petticoat. But generally speaking, I really like the look. I think it looked cute, and I understand why Kiki has a black cat, because I am covered in cat hair and dog hair. Like the moment I put it on my floor to cut out the fabric, it was completely covered in cat and dog hair. Also, I should say at this point, we have reached 10,000 subscribers on here, which is absolutely insane. And I want to thank you all for being here, for making it possible for me to make videos like this and just, you know, sew outfits of my favorite movie heroes and share it with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and for the next video I am planning to make something really exciting, but it's going to be a bit of a bigger project. So I hope I'll be able to deliver it in a week's time, and I hope I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!